The following podcast contains information and real stories about sexual assault and or violence which may be triggering to survivors.
From sporting
In the morning newspapers, a third allegation of sexual assault. By afternoon,
had to
a
fight to
fourth.
share her story of sexual abuse.
Bravery and the strength of Grace Tame.
Another
and
former
people like
staffer
her.
alleging the man had run his hand up her thigh in a
haven't
cattle
seen
bar.
this process of child grooming.
After a rape allegation and a question-time sex scandal.
woman who bled heavily.
In 2016, the Australian Bureau of Statistics estimated that 1 in 6 women and 1 in 16 men have experienced some form of sexual crime since the age of 15. On top of that, most major studies indicate that 25% of young women between ages of 15 and 21 will experience some form of sexual crime within that 6-year time frame. This is far too high. In a time where the world is changing so fast, sexual crimes seem to be regularly dominating the news, which begs the question, why is this and how can we help prevent it? I'm your host, Byron, a 22-year-old podcaster from Sydney, Australia. Join me as I interview Brent, one of Australia's most respected communicators in the field of sexual crime, criminal profiling and personal safety in secondary schools and universities. He may have been to your school. Having spoken to over 900,000 students on the subject, this podcast aims to educate young people around the reality of sexual crimes and the severity of these crimes. Together, we explore the legal definitions as well as the ethical and moral, wrapping these up in metaphors and stories in an easy to listen to and easy to understand way. Welcome to this episode. All right, welcome back to the podcast. We're going to be talking about online dating, sexting, nudes, anything to do with online in this realm of conversation. Obviously, this is very prevalent for young people. I don't know what percentage of people are meeting online, but it's a very high percentage, higher than 50%. On top of that, COVID-19, been locked inside, international people locked inside. Sexting has never been higher. There's a lot of stuff going on with that. So I'd love to just get your thoughts on this. Obviously, you've been doing this for 25 years, 25 years. So you've probably seen that shift happen.
Oh, definitely.
What are we looking at when it comes to sexting and around legal?
Yeah, look, you're right. You know, there was a time when I was doing these talks where we didn't even have mobile phones.
Yeah.
Or they were a fairly new thing. Now, if you've got a group of 100 year 10 kids in the room, you say, well, who's got a smartphone? Well, 99 of them have.
Yeah.
You know, so yeah, look, and phones are great. You know, phones are great. As a parent, I know my kids went through high school and stuff, and I've now got a son overseas and things like that. You know, phones are fantastic. You can maintain contact and everything else. But of course, as with all of this technology, there can be a dark side, a downside to it, and what I'm finding, and you're quite right, Byron, that in the talks that I do over the years, there's an increase in discussion around sexting, what's appropriate, what isn't, what do the laws say. Look, it's really interesting. Some years ago, I was down in Adelaide, and I was invited to present down there to 3 schools. And then after my presentation, I was up on stage, and there were these 3 schools, and there's quite a large number of students. I was on stage. The head of the South Australia Sex Crimes Unit was on stage, and there was a judge on stage, and they could ask any questions. And a lot of the questions that came forward from these Year 11 students was around this, sexting images and things, and I can't paraphrase it, but interestingly, the judge was the one who I think had the greatest impact. And he was basically saying to the young people in the room, he said, you would be amazed at how many young people, usually young men in their teens, end up in my courtroom who are charged with high-level offences of transporting pornographic images, child pornography. And he said, those laws were never designed to be used against teenagers for misuse of phones, because when I was in the police, 100 years ago, a lot of these laws were there about transportation of child pornography and things, and we used them to break up pedophile rings and things like that. Now, we were, back in those days, in the 80s and 90s, we were talking about hard copy of pornographic images that was being brought in from overseas and being distributed. Those same crimes have sort of sat there over time and just been sort of adapted to technology and mobile phones and the digital age. So their origin comes back from policing pedophile type rings and things, but they are more likely now, these crimes, to be broken by teenagers and often teenage boys.
Yeah.
So the questions that I commonly get around this, Byron, in my talks, one common one is, What about if two people, say, year 10, year 11, just as an example, are going out together, and they maybe exchange images, nude images, naked images, and they're both okay with it. What does the law say about that? Well, look, the law would say this. Technically under law, it's an offence to be in possession of a naked image of a person under 18 in Australia, even if you have that person's permission.
Mm.
If we look at the spirit of that law, it's there so that we can prosecute adults who have images that they get from children who allow them to have those images. Yeah, so that's why we have to have that law.
Similar to the age conversation we had.
Exactly.
The original reason that law was put in place is not kind of why.
It's to protect children from adults, not to police 15 and 16-year-olds.
Exactly.
And so when we have a law in Australia, and there would be similar laws overseas, where it says that being in possession of a naked image of a person under 18 is a criminal offence, regardless of whether they know it or not.
So why is that? If 16, you're sexually an adult. Why is it under 18?
Yeah, there's a lot of these conundrums under the law,
right.
aren't there?
That's just how it is.
Well, you can you can have sex at age 16, but you can't buy pornographic, go onto a pornographic website till you're 18. So, it's bizarre.
Yeah.
There's a lot of conundrums under the law. Here's a question that the question that I often get is two people going out together, say year 10, year 11, and they exchange some images. Is that an offence? Look, technically you could argue it is, because each person is then in possession of a naked image of another person who's under 18. But I can tell you the police aren't going to pursue that. That's not what that law is there for. So then we go down the line and say, well, okay, what about we take the next step? What if those two people are going out together? What if they break up? And let's say the guy, and again, usually it is, not exclusively, it doesn't have to be under the law, but you've got two people going out. They could be two guys going out together, it could be two girls, guy and a girl, it doesn't matter. But let's say one of them, with the images that they have, without the permission of the other, sends them out. They've broken up and they've got the shits, or just for a laugh or whatever, they think, I'm going to send these naked images of this person out to my mates.
That'll show them.
Who will then show it to their mates. And then in a month or 6 weeks, let's say the person who's the subject of those images is at a party. And people come up to that person who they don't even know and say, hey, look, we've got all these naked images of you on my phone. And that person starts freaking out. This is often where the police get involved. Because what we have here is a person, and let's say, just for the sake of the argument, it's a young woman who's allowed a young guy to have some naked images of her. And she was okay with that. But at no time was she okay with him distributing them to his mates, to their mates, to their mates. So what we have here now under legal interpretation is the transportation of child pornography. She's under 18. It's naked images, and it's been transported via a digital format.
So what you're saying is he was fine until he distributed them.
Yeah. The situation where they're both okay with each other having the image is one that technically you could argue it's an offence, but the police would say we wouldn't get involved until such time as somebody reported that image had been distributed or shown to others. Okay, so so each person who received that image is receiving a naked image of a person who's under 18. Now, people often say to me, well, what if that image is sent to me? I didn't ask for it. It just comes to my phone and I open it going, I don't want that.
Yeah.
Well, technically you haven't committed an offence because you're not in control of what's sent to you on your phone. So let you just say you delete that. Well, you're not going to be charged. But if you send that image to someone else, now you are transporting that image and you know that it's come to you without the permission of the person, and you know you have no permission to send it or show it to you. So that's where those investigations can go, and I have had, sadly, no shortage of young people who something like that has occurred to them. I had a young woman many years ago at a school who was going out with a guy quite a bit older than her, and he was encouraging, sort of coercing her and providing naked images for him. And she sort of thought, well, maybe this is what happens when you go out with somebody older. Tragically, he had a number of other young girls that thought that they were going out with this guy as well. Same thing. And I think it was a friend or a friend of a friend that stumbled across some of her naked images on a website, right? On a social media, or like on a website. And bottom line was he had been gathering all these images from all these different young women and selling them and stuff like that. Now, this put her in a terrible situation that not only had she been in a relationship with an older guy that her parents wouldn't be too happy with, she provided naked images, which her parents are going to freak out with. Now he's posting them and it's sort of gone viral. Terrible situation for that young girl to be in. But she did end up, in this particular case, she ended up with her parents reporting it to the police. They started an investigation and the guy was charged with a massive amount of high-level offences.
Yeah.
So if anybody listening into the podcast has ever been in, or in the future is ever in a position where a naked image of them is distributed without their permission, it's a criminal offence. If that image is of a person under 18, it's legally classified as child pornography, but it's still an offence if the image is of a person over 18. It's just a different offence.
Of course.
So let's say you've got two people at university going out together and they exchange images, and then one transports that image without the other one's. Well, now this is the unlawful transportation of pornographic images. The only difference being it's not child pornography.
Yeah.
It's not... The whole child pornography thing is more serious because it's children and things
not as
like
extreme,
that. But it's still an offence. The flip side of this is, what if somebody sends me images that I don't want, nudes or the dick pics or whatever it is, and they're being sent to someone unsolicited. They don't want them. They're opening it up. They're offended by. This is also a criminal offence, and it becomes a more serious offence if the person that those images are sent to is a child.
So to clarify, what you're saying is the person who sent the images is committing the crime.
Correct.
If they're sending unsolicited.
Yes. Yeah, unsolicited.
Yeah.
So let's say a young person has a message on their phone, or what's this, they open it up, and somebody has sent them naked images, which is really confronting and offensive to the person who's received. They haven't asked for them.
Yeah.
That's a criminal offence. And obviously, when children get caught up in this who have those images sent, it becomes more serious. And this links back to, again, the origin of these crimes is pedophiles, adults, sending naked images to children or vice versa.
And this is a big one because kids have phones from like 11 years old nowadays.
Yeah.
They're on Snapchat by the time they're 13.
Yes.
Snapchat was designed to send nudes. That was its original design.
Right.
You could send nudes to someone, then it would disappear after 10 seconds.
Yeah, unless you
screenshot
it. Yeah.
It's evolved since then, obviously.
Yeah.
But like that was the purpose of that platform. And so this is very, very prominent among young people.
It is. And you're right. Sending an image, that push of a thumb to hit send, once that image is gone, you have zero control over what happens to it.
Yeah.
And it may be somebody who at the time of you sending it respects you and you're in a relationship. But look, respectfully, most schooling age relationships aren't lifelong relationships. So at some point they fall over, and when they do, that's often when this stuff happens.
No, like hopefully you're not dating someone who would, even if you had a dirty breakup, would send your photos. I'd like to think. But, it
can happen.
It happens a lot,
It can happen. So sending of images without permission is an offence. Being sent images to you that you didn't ask for, which it can be an offence. The other one that comes up a bit, Byron, is what if somebody pressures me into having to send them nudes? Yeah. This is also a criminal offence. And that pressure is often starts off being can you send something? Oh, no, I don't want to. Well, you better send it, otherwise this might happen, or I'm going to do this, or I'm going to do that. So we're moving into that realm of blackmail to elicit pornographic images, which again becomes even more serious if that pressure is applied to a child and things such as that. So I've been involved in a number of those whereby a person is placed under ongoing increasing pressure. So they might relent to that pressure and send one image, hoping that it's all finished. The person with it then comes back and says, now, if you don't want me to send this out or show it to all of my friends, you have to do this, or send me more. Yeah. So it starts down this rabbit hole and gets worse and worse. So sadly, I've had some involvement in those, which is also, it's a criminal offence. Another one that I had some involvement with a few years back was a situation where a couple of year 10 boys pinched another guy's phone in class. A guy was in front of them swinging backwards and forwards on a chair, had his phone in his pocket, and as he was swinging back, his phone was almost slipping out of his pocket, and one of the guys leant forward, and as he pulled back, grabbed the phone. As he went forward, took the phone. Now, at that point, and this is often how these things sort of evolve, I don't think those two boys premeditated anything. They just grabbed the phone and the guy for a laugh stuck it in his blazer pocket.
Yeah.
Year 10 students. Then the bell goes and they've got this phone. I go, well, okay, well, what are we going to do? Oh, I know, just for a laugh. And, here we go again. Just for a laugh. Why don't we go into the toilet at school and get a few dick pics on this phone and then send them to all the female names on the phone. So
how is that a laugh? Come on.
Yeah, so this is how it starts.
Yeah.
We pinched this guy's phone. I tell you what would be funny, doing that. So they do this. These two guys do that. Then they go and he's got 23 or whatever female names. So they send those images that they've just taken of themselves out to all of those. Then, having done that, they take his phone and they put it back. They put it back into his school bag, which was at his locker. He comes back after recess or something, picks up his phone. He's already starting to get texts from all these women going, what are you doing, these girls, He's in year 10, so the majority of female names on his phone are 15 and 16-year-olds who have just been sent these pornographic images. So what the boys who did it thought was just funny, a bit of a laugh, is actually technically quite a high-level criminal offence.
Because there's 20 people.
Yeah.
And they're underage.
He freaks out, goes to a teacher, says, hey, this is what's happened. Teacher goes, okay, when did you last have your phone? Worked out it must have been taken during maths. The principal brought everyone back into class, got them to sit where they'd been sitting, right? Long story short, they identified the two boys that had done it. Now, I got a phone call from that principal at about 7:30 that night, who'd had all the parents in the whole 9 yards, and he said to me, look, just want to clarify with you, what are your thoughts? Is this a mandatory reporting case? Meaning, do I as the principal have to pick up the phone and notify the police on this? I said, yeah, definitely. I said, because what you have there is pornographic images who have been sent, in this case, mostly to children, which is a criminal offence of a sexual nature. As a principal, if you're aware of that, you're under mandatory reporting. You have to report it. I said, all it would take is for one of those girls to show one of their parents one of those images.
And you're gone.
It goes to the police. Okay? They know who sent it. It's a boy from X school. They come in, speak to the principal. What do you mean you knew this? You didn't report it. Now you're in breach of the law. So he had to actually pick up the phone and call the police. So what ends up happening is these 2 year 10 boys who were then suspended for this action are now potentially facing 23 counts of transportation of pornographic images to children. And the police get involved. Now, what happens in the end of all that? Well, I don't know. It's none of my business. But I guess where I'm going with this is oftentimes these situations start out low-key, a few silly decisions are made, and then we transition from something which is a bit silly, a bit foolish, a bit regrettable, to a full-on high-level police investigation. So my message to anybody listening to the podcast is you need to be exceedingly cautious with what you send, what you do with images that you have on your phone. My other message is to anyone listening in, if you are ever subjected to any of the stuff that we're talking about in this segment, there are a whole lot of laws, a whole lot of crimes that have been committed if you are exploited or in any way exposed, to any of this type of thing. Yeah.
No, I think it's so important, and I think the point you made about how it starts off small and can start off as a joke, and it can skyrocket into something like that is massive. Because I think a classic example would be, maybe you're broken up with your girlfriend or something, you've got a nude, you just say, just show my mate, just to show what she looked like. He then shows his mate, bang, 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 bang. Within a week, the whole year group has these photos of her. Now you're under the pump because you've distributed it.
Yeah, and if we apply the absolute letter of the law, and I don't want to get too bogged down with it, but you don't even have to send that naked image, using your example, which is a really good one, of your ex-girlfriend. You don't even have to send it for a crime to be committed. Just showing it to your mate on your phone is a criminal offence.
But it's not as easy to track down.
It's not as easy to track down until an investigation's done and we're interviewing somebody. Yeah, and the police have got a bit of leverage. Yeah. And the guy ends up saying, he did show it to me. Oh, so this guy showed you. Where were you when he showed it to you? Oh, we're at school. What? Okay. So your friend showed you images of, it's a criminal offence.
Yeah.
I had a guy, year 11 boy, dropped a phone into an Apple store it was playing up to get serviced. And he'd been in a relationship with a year 10 girl earlier in the year. They'd broken up, nothing nasty, quite amicable. But that during their relationship, she had sent him quite a few images that he had on his phone. And he came up after one of my talks and he said to me, he's a nice young kid, he said, look, Brent, he said, I had these images on my phone. I'd pretty much forgotten they were there. I had no intention of doing anything nasty with them or anything like that, but he had to drop his phone in to the Apple store at Bondi Junction in Sydney to be serviced. And just by chance, this person servicing the phone, they plug the phone into a computer that goes through this whole process of trying to identify what the problem with the phone is, keeps throwing up these images of this naked girl. So the employee of Apple has to go, okay, we've got an issue here. This is a bloke's phone with naked images of someone who appears to be under 18. So now the Apple employee has a process by which they've got to protect themselves. Puts their hand up, calls a supervisor over, doing a service on this phone. There's a whole lot of images of this one young girl who's naked. Does she look under 18 to you? Supervisor's got a 16-year-old daughter.
Yeah.
Says, I don't reckon she's 16. He's right, she was 15. So what do Apple do? Put the phone in a Ziploc bag, put it in the safe, call the police.
No way.
So now the police come up. So you've got two young uniforms come up, get the phone. Now they've got to... So Apple have gone, okay, now it's your issue. So the police have got this phone full of these naked images of this girl. So this guy says, I got to knock on the door. Police are standing there with my phone in a Ziploc bag. Are you such and such? Yep. Did you drop this phone at Apple yesterday? Yeah. Are your mum and dad home? Yeah. Why? We need to chat to you about the images on this phone. Because he's in possession of pornographic images.
Oh, that's rough.
So he's telling me this, not in front of all his mates, big note himself.
Yeah.
He's telling me the story, he said, because this could be of some value to other young people who attend your talks. So the police went through each image and asked him, does she know that you have this image? Have you shown this image to anybody? Have you sent it to anybody? They did it for each image. Then at the end of it took a statement. Then they said to him, so just to be clear, when we go to this girl's house, as we will now, and show her and her parents these images, which we have to under law, she will tell us that she gave you permission to have them. He said, yeah, okay. And that's what happens next. And what this is, it's two police who are protecting themselves by applying the law.
And because Apple was protecting themselves.
Exactly. And so this is how this process... Now, this boy technically hasn't done anything wrong. So now they're at the girl's house. The police have to show her and her parents these images.
Oh, my gosh.
To confirm that she knew he had them. You see, because their view is he could just have got these from someone else.
Yeah.
So the police could be showing the girl the images and she goes, I have no idea who this guy is. But turns out, no, I know who this guy is. We used to go out together. I allowed him to have them. At the end of that process, the police turned to the parents, not to the girl. She's 15. Turned to her parents and said, would you be looking at laying charges against this young boy for being in possession of pornographic images of your daughter? She's under 18. It's a criminal offence, even with her permission. Parents said, oh, goodness, no. No. We know this boy. We believe our daughter is, in essence, as responsible for the situation as he was. Then mum says, has he sent any of these images to anyone else without my daughter's permission? Because if he has, I think perhaps then we'd look at what our options are. Police said at this point we have a statement from him saying that he hasn't. However, in cases like this, we have to send the phone off for analysis to ensure that these images haven't been transported. He said, we will do that and we'll get back to you. She said, oh, what would our option be if he sent some of those images? The police said, oh, well, that's a federal offence. That would be the transportation of child pornography. Now, when they did a check on his phone, thankfully for him, for the girl, for the people.
They did the check?
Yeah, they did the check. Under law, they do a check because it's like, well, we need to tick off all our boxes there. And this is the young boy telling me. He said, they came back with my phone and said, look, we've checked it. It all stacks up. We'll just give you a warning and you've got to delete those images off your phone. And he said to me, this young bloke, he said, what if when I dropped my phone at Apple, the images of that girl weren't of an ex-girlfriend of mine? What if they were a mate's ex-girlfriend
who'd sent them to
who
me?
Just for a laugh, he sent them out to all the boys in the footy team or the boys in the band or whatever it is? What if that had been found? I said, well, ask yourself. Here's a young girl with her mum and dad sitting next to her going, who the hell is this guy? And who else has them? So easily these situations that can start off being even in essence consensual in some degree can turn. So that was a young guy in year 11 who dropped his phone in to be serviced.
That is
just got to be careful.
That is an unbelievable story.
Got to be careful.
That is full on. And that's really cool that he told you that. I think that takes a lot of courage.
And he came up to tell me because he said this could be of some value for other people who have done what I did.
Well, I mean, look, it's just I can't believe Apple could even see the photos, to be honest. Surely there's a privacy thing there.
No, they can't. Look, do you know what? I actually went into Apple with a phone. I had an Apple phone that was playing up a couple of years ago. I went into the same store he did. Now, the only reason I got served straight away is the young woman in the Genius Bar had gone through one of my talks at a school 3 or 4 years earlier, and she said, "Oh, I can probably do it for you now. Go and have a coffee for 20 minutes, or you can just watch." I said, "Oh, I'd be interested in how you do this." My phone was playing up.
Yeah.
They literally plugged my phone into a computer, and they put it through the service check, and it just goes through all different areas of your phone, and it throws up different things. And he had said in my phone, I've had photos that had just disappeared, been deleted. When I unplug my phone in the morning, it's on 100. I send a couple of texts, it goes down to 2%. So they're doing all these checks of his phone. She did the same thing of mine, and it goes like 100 miles an hour. Took 15 minutes. She unplugged it and said, "No, we can't fix your phone. It's under warranty." She went out the back, got me a new one. He did the exact same tests that I did, but it was just that he had to go away and leave his phone.
Yeah.
Guy upstairs is doing it. Boom, and these images pop up.
Yeah. Wow.
It's as easy as that.
Yeah.
Easy as
so
that.
I think the key message here is just be careful.
Got to be careful.
Be careful and understand. Look, if you send it when it's on the internet, it's there forever. It is never going to leave. All it takes is one person to screenshot it. They've now got it. They can do whatever they want with it.
Yeah.
And people on the internet are ruthless, from what I've seen. So I think just be careful. Obviously, once again, the same goes with every conversation, we're not saying don't do this stuff. Just be careful around it. Be mindful around it.
Oh, look, when people ask me these questions, Byron, when I'm answering these questions, I'm not sort of waving my finger at them saying you've done the wrong thing, you've been naughty. I'm just sort of, people are saying to me, often through personal experience, what if I've allowed somebody to have my image and then I suddenly discover they've sent it out to half of Sydney? Well, it's a criminal offence. What if somebody sends me stuff I don't want and it's really offensive? It's a criminal offence.
Yeah.
What if somebody pressures me into sending them stuff that I don't want to? It's a criminal offence. What if somebody has an image of me and they use it to try and blackmail me? It's a criminal offence.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, this has been a powerful episode.
Yeah.
I think it's super relevant. Any just real quick final thoughts on it? I think we covered everything.
Look, I think that's about it. I just finally, I remember some years ago a Year 12 student talking to me about how an ex-boyfriend tried to use images of her that he had on his phone to manipulate or coerce her into having sex with him. So this is where
that's a
phone images
double
falls
whammy.
into the issue of consent that we spoke about earlier. She met the guy at the party. They'd been broken up for a couple of months, had a chance meeting. Really loud in the lounge room, lots of music, went outside for a chat. She said, as soon as I got outside, I realised that his view of us going outside was different to mine. He started to try and get a bit intimate. She wasn't interested. Long story short, he said to her, "Oh, so you don't want to have sex with me?" She said, "No, look, of course I don't. I didn't come out here for that." And he's like, "Oh, but we used to go out and stuff."
Yeah, yeah.
And he said, "Oh, so you're just going back inside?" She said, "Yeah, pretty much." So she walked past him, and this is just another example of how people can be manipulated or coerced, or there can be an attempt to do that to gain a sexual gratification, right? Hands in his pockets as she's walking past, he says, "Oh, you're going back inside?" She said, "Yeah, of course I am." He said, "Okay, fair enough." He said, "Look, you know all those photos of you I've got on my phone?" And she stopped. And he said, "You know the photos I'm talking about?" He said, "I kept them all. I've still got them on my phone." He said, if you go back inside, I might just start sending them to some of the boys in the lounge room just for a laugh. Now, you sure you don't want to have sex?"
Wow.
Now, that, under legal interpretation, is coercement, manipulation, stroke blackmail, to try and coerce a sexual act. Now, she gave the guy a mouthful and went inside, but her question to me was, what if at that point I'd gone, "Oh my God, I will be destroyed if those photos are sent to his friends." So I ended up doing with him sexually what he wanted. Is that consent? No.
No way.
Because you have been coerced, manipulated, blackmailed into doing it. Secondly, her question was, what if I'd gone inside and he sent those images into his friend? Is that a criminal offence? Yes, it is. Now, he didn't do that, but yes, it would be.
And I would say, if any girls or guys listening to this, or anyone listening to this, you now know that the criminal offence. So if you do get blackmailed, you can just throw it in their face, be like, "That's 5 years in prison. If you do that, I'll call the police." Or you know what you're talking about now.
Yeah, it is, and it's look, most people are decent. We've been saying this throughout these podcasts, and most people do the right thing. But sadly, and phones are fantastic. Phones are great. But as with all of these things, there's an underside. And if you do the work that I do, you speak to enough people, you hear these stories all the time. I mean, I could sit here for another 2 hours just running off stories.
Of course.
But I guess what we've done in this particular chat is covered off on the most common questions I get, and hopefully some examples which are beneficial to those listening, whether they're young men or young women or what, doesn't matter. This hopefully has answered a few questions for people.
I think so. So, that's it for the technology, social media conversation with photos and nudes and stuff. Thanks so much for coming on the show.
No worries. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for making it all the way through this episode. After hearing the contents of this podcast, many may realize the sad reality of what has happened to them. If this is you and you seek help or guidance on what to do next, please click the link in the show notes. It'll redirect you to some resources as well as a helpline if you want to talk to someone anonymous. As you'll hear in other episodes, Brent and I do mention how important it is to start talking to someone, whether that's a family member, a friend, or it could be someone anonymous on a helpline. They are trained professionals, and we highly recommend you start this conversation. As you'll hear as well, in no way do you have to report this crime. This is completely up to you, but know that there are resources and links provided in the show notes below should you seek guidance.